Thanks everyone for joining today. So the presentation today is going to be made up of a couple of different demos, and then I'm also going to talk about the different technologies and also some of the products themselves. So we are COTU, if you don't know. We provide a set of wholesale solutions to channel partners, so specifically built in this scenario around Wildix. And the whole idea of these products is they help you win Wildix deals because they are solutions that the customers need as well as Wildix, and therefore they give you a pull-through revenue. And I'll talk a bit more about how that works as we go along. So what I want to talk about first of all is MyWallboards. So MyWallboards, it's a cloud-based wallboard platform. It integrates with the PBX, and it allows the customer to quickly build and deliver live wallboards that can be shared around the business. And rather than talking, I'm going to show you everything about it. So first of all, to log in, we log into the tenant. So what we normally do is we match the names of these tenants up with the URL of the Wildix PBX. I'm going to start my demo slightly backwards. So first of all, rebranding. The wallboard can be completely rebranded to suit your branding model, either for your business, so it follows your business delivery, or if the customer can rebrand it in theirs. Again, that's because it's visible, you know, on large TVs around the call center or on people's desktops. It's really simple to rebrand. You can pick the color palettes from whatever you want, click go, click save, and it's updated. That's a global variable, affects all users. I'm just going to cancel that and move it off. So I'm not going to change that because I like the color. So how do we license it? We license it by the extensions that you want to monitor rather than the number of extensions on the PBX. And that's because a standard PBX, for example, will have door phones, conference phones, back office users. So you tell us how many licenses you want. In this case, you can see that I've got 12. And if, for example, I try and add a 13th, I'll get an error. You can give the user, the far end customer, access to do this themselves, and therefore they can come to you and order another license, or you can provide this as part of a managed service to them. It's completely up to you. How do we then roll that into users themselves? So users are the users that log into the system. So if I go and have a look at Nigel Mansell, you'll see that Nigel Mansell's here and he's got a user profile. The user profiles pretty much talk for themselves. Super admin can do everything that I'm doing in this demo, which also includes the whole lot. So that will make it easier for that user to do everything, configure all of the different components. Admin will let you create users, add new groups, and so on and so forth. And it goes all the way through to a standard user that can create wallboards. A view-only user, as the name suggests, will allow you to create view-only wallboards. The example there would be that if you had a team of salespeople, you would create an individual wallboard for each user and share them with each person. They'd see their own statistics. There is another way of doing that I'm going to show you that potentially makes that a bit different. So it's nice, simple setup. Send them out, send them a welcome mail. That lets them create their own password, and off they go, and they're added into the system. We then have a couple of elements to create effectively shortcuts. So first of all, within the Wildix PBXs, as you know, there are lots of different call groups. So you can choose which ones are actually displayed within the system, so that when you're building wallboards, you don't have to sift through 50 different call groups, just the ones that apply to you. And then the other element you've got is extension groups. So if, for example, the sales team are always the same, in the case of my demo, 4 people, you can put them in a group already. And then that means that each time you go to create a new widget with those users, they're already grouped together and you don't have to go and sift through and find them. Again, that's a useful feature if you've got a very large implementation, 200-300 users. So realistically, from a configuration point of view, that's everything. So what I'm going to do is jump straight into the dashboards and show you how the dashboards work. So this is a live dashboard that's created. You can see that I've got a load of different statistics in here. The user status is pulled from the Wildix PBX, so as users toggle themselves backwards and forwards. I am, for the purposes of this demonstration, Clive Cussler. So if I put myself in an away status on Wildix, you'll see me changing status as I go through. That's live and it's updated. I can also see how long I've been in the States. So in the case of this one, is looking at talk time. I'm looking at different statistics. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to build one from scratch to show you how simple this is to do. So I'm going to call this demo. I'm going to save it, and that's going to create a new dashboard. It will pop it down here at the end, and I've got a completely blank template. So what that will do is then I'm going to add a widget. So in the case of my widget, I'm just going to sit in here and go, call it calls in queue. Okay, and I'm going to look at this live tile. This live tile says how many calls are currently waiting. So calls in queue. I'm going to pick the queue that I want, and I can pick multiple queues. So I'm just going to click the support queue, click save, and now I've got a tile. I'll add another tile. This time I'm going to call it calls active. So this is calls in flight, for example. Again, my live tile, so total ongoing calls, pick my same queue and click save. And now I've got 2 tiles. So the next thing I want to say is, for example, I want to look at more historic data. So I go total calls today. And this time I'm going to look at the call groups module. And then here I'm going to say total calls, and I'm going to pick a date range. So we have a set of predefined date ranges, or we also have, you can pick specific ones. So I can choose a date range from point to point and let me do that against the calendar. So in this case, I'm just going to go today. And then, but what I'll do to get some data is I'm just going to go the last 30 days and pop that in. And now I've got calls in queue. I can also start to look at other types of statistics as well. So for example, in the same one, if I went to call groups, I could say, look at the total number of calls answered. But what I'll actually do is I'll go, what's my average queue time? So if I go calls, AVG, queue time, obviously these labels can be whatever you want them to be. This time, same thing, I'm going to pick them through. Again, I'll just pick 30 days to get some more data. Click support, off I go. And I've got my average queue time is 8 seconds. I could also, looking at these queue statistics, look at SLAs. So if I go, let's say this is a sales queue, I'll go sales SLA. Again, I'm going to pick call groups. Then I'm going to pick down here and go to the bottom SLA. This time I have an SLA option. So this is the time it takes to answer the call. So I want percentage of calls answered, say in 10 seconds. So I'm going to put 10 seconds, pop that down to 30 days, do that, and I'm at 73%. So what I can now do is, if you look at this, you'd say, well, there's a lot of white space. So I can go and change the layout of this display. So I can auto size them for a start. That'll take up the space. To quickly show you what that's capable of, I have a great one here called big ones, 2 giant numbers. This is live wallboard, so those will go up and down as the calls go in and out of the queue. And then reflect back across, what I can also do is start to change colors. Now I can change both the color. So for example, I could just make the top of the tile a different color altogether. So there we go, make it red. But I can also change the color of the tile inside it. But I can also do cleverer stuff than that. So if I go into here and I want to say, I want a threshold. So this time I'm going to put an SLA threshold in. So if I go 0 to 80, and then I say 81, remember this is percentages, to 90. And then I say 91 to 100. And I just go and change these colors. So I want this one to be red. I want this one to be yellow. And I want this one to be green. I do that and click save. I'm now red. But obviously, if I go into the configuration of that tile and change my SLA to be 5 seconds, I'll go to 27%. And then I change my time to be, let's say, 50 seconds. I'll go to 100%. What I can do is take that back down to 10. I can also, remember this is designed to go on a wallboard in the corner of the room. Again, I can auto size that font. I can make the red one, when it hits that percentage, I can make it flash. So from this side of the room, I can see that happening. You can do that to any of the tiles to change the configuration of them. So what that means is that you can do that to all statistics types. So for example, average queue time. So if the average time in queue goes above 25 seconds, make the tile amber, and then if it goes above a minute, go to red, whatever variable you want. But obviously the point of my demonstration is the speed that I'm building these tiles. Now you saw the other tiles, I'm also looking at user statistics. So within user statistics, if I go over and I go and pick extension inbound, what I'll do is I'll go sales team total calls. And this time I'm going to pick total calls. And instead of a number chart, I'm going to pick a list chart. And then over in here, I'm going to choose my extension group. And remember, I pre-grouped. So if I just have extensions, I can see the list of all the extensions that are licensed. If I go over to extension group, I can pick that predefined sales team and add them in. Then what I can do is sort of move the tiles around because everything's completely dynamic. So I can then do this. Again, if I can't see those from the other side of the room, I can auto size those fonts, and it will dynamically reassign them and move them around based on what it's doing. So if I go over to another one where I'm looking at actual statistics, here I am, let me just show this one, the total team demo and sales members. I've got total calls, average talk time, how many sales calls I've handled today, what the overall SLA is. But we can also, with MyWallboards, look at outbound statistics. So there's outbound statistics. If I go into these, we'll show you that I've got total talk time, total calls, answer calls, unanswered calls, longest calls, and average talk time. So that lets you build an outbound wallboard, say for a sales outbound team. So you can see in here who's got the highest average talk time, who's made the most calls, who's had the best answer rate, who's had the unanswered calls, whatever you need that to be. You can also combine those statistics together into sales inbound and outbound together. So by putting those together, you can build lots of different wallboards to have the view. And you can build as many as you like. There's no licensing limitations. And you can just keep putting them together and then build them into a flow. So the next question is, okay, well, how do I use the wallboards when I've got them on screen? So I'll go back into my main demo. First of all, I can just hit this button and I can just full screen it. And you'll see it sat there. And from the full screen, I can toggle through the ones on the top. So that's pretty useful if it's sitting on somebody's desktop. The other thing I can do is I can put it into a play mode. If I put it into play mode, it will just flick through those dashboards on a 10-second rotation. So again, useful on a desktop, but also useful if you've got that on a PC or a smart TV that's running in the corner of the room. The next element of what we can do is share the wallboards. So first of all, I've built this wallboard and I think it's really good. So what I want to do is I want to share it. So first of all, I can go and share it with a user. So I pick the wallboard I want. So there it is. And I can share multiple wallboards. And then I go and pick the user I want, in this case, Nigel Mansell. As soon as I click share, that wallboard will appear on Nigel Mansell's account. Now, if Nigel Mansell's a view-only user, he'll only be able to see that wallboard and nothing else. If he's any level other than view-only, they can then take that wallboard and change the data within it and use it effectively as a template. So again, useful for large organizations who have a data team that are building the wallboard and then saying, this is the standard format that we want for everything else. So the other option I've got, so obviously since I share that, that will be shared with Nigel Mansell, is I can also create a URL share. So in this case, I'll go demo, and I'm just going to pick that wallboard and the one that I just created. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click share. What that will do is create it as a link. And there's the link there. I can copy that link. I can open a blank and I can do that, click go. And now that wallboard is running as a straight URL. You see it's a randomized URL at the top of the screen. That's really useful for a number of things. One, a lot of smart TVs can't cache user logins, usernames and passwords. So this means that you can just save this in the favorites of the smart TV's built-in browser and it will just run. It's also very useful if you deal with third parties or you have management teams that want a set of statistics where you can just send them the link and again, have it as either a just display in this case or in the play mode and it will play and rotate through the wallboards as it goes. So for the wallboards itself, that's the personal demo. There's obviously a lot more detail. The one thing we also have is a full wiki. So everything that I've talked about and everything with all of our products is about self-service, either our partners being able to self-serve and configure the systems themselves or the far end customer being able to do it themselves. And you can choose how that works. To do that, you hit the wiki button, that will open the support page and you'll see that the support is grouped into the different permission sets. So if I am only a standard user, I'll only be able to see this and below. If I'm a full admin, I'll see these modules. So for example, the customer wouldn't even know that there was the ability to rebrand the portal if you didn't want them to. Okay, so now I'm just going to quickly move back to my slides and just talk about MyWallboards and how it works from a partner point of view. So you obviously need WMS 5.2 and above. I think most people are now generally sitting on 6. So that would be fine. We need one business license, which is to basically to integrate the API, which is to one business license to integrate the API. And then presence, to get the presence status, obviously Wildix, you need essential licenses and above to use the present status. MyWallboards will work with Wildix basic licenses, but you'll just see the blue dot and you won't see any of the present status. And we can run MyWallboards in, and we already do, in most AWS regions. So anywhere that you're running Wildix, we also run MyWallboards. How does it price in? It's a UK pricing for obviously international partners on the call. We've got international pricing plans as well. We price in most currencies, so just get in contact afterwards. We can cover that off. It's a really simple model. Minimum of 5 licenses ordered, 5 to 25, and then you'll see that they just break through a bit like the Wildix licenses do as well. We don't have any setup fees, and all of our contract terms for this product are all on 30-day terms. So again, this is really easy if you want to do a proof of contact with the customer, that you can order it for 30 days. They can try it out and then carry on using it. For partners, so anybody that signs up as a COTU partner with us for any of our products, we automatically will give you a MyWallboards tenant inclusive that you can use for both your own internal PBX for your support teams or your sales teams. And also then obviously, just like I'm sure everybody does, it's the best way to demo the product to the customer like you do with a Wildix PBX. And that is it for MyWallboards. What have we got on the roadmap? Sorry, I've got an extra slide. I'll slot in afterwards. Charts, graphs, and dials are coming in the next release. We've got those sort of working through at the moment. That's sort of different graphic representations of the same data. The ability to schedule the wallboard as a report, so it will email out or be exported as a CSV, however you want that to work. And then integrations with third-party data, so pulling in CRM data from other sources. So say, for example, my inbound sales team widget is tracking, I've had 55 calls to the sales queue. How many of them have converted into sales? Well, that would come from your CRM system, and we'll pull that in. And again, things like, weather widgets, the football stats, stuff like that. Whenever people want to put into the wallboard, that's all coming in the next few releases that we've got on the roadmap. So next, as I crash through our products, I'm going to crash straight into RAMP, which stands for, as it says, Recording Archive Management Platform. Not called Recordings Archive Management Platform because it's really just recordings. So How does it work? I'll go into the pricing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into a demo for people that haven't seen it. Two seconds. I'm just moving between. So. What is RAMP? We take the call recordings from the Wildix PBX and we move them into our RAMP environment. The RAMP environment all sits in AWS, and all of our calls sit in the Amazon's S3 archive platform. Without going too much into technical detail, which we do, obviously with partner demos, we can do the individual demos of the product. We actually use the Amazon CDN to deliver the call. So from a security point of view, that means we're delivering the call directly to the user's browser, not via any of our web services. So that means that we can prove point-to-point encryption through the system. And that's the key point of RAMP. It's a secure archive platform. It's designed to take these call recordings, put them into a secure encrypted environment, and then deliver them back to the user in a secure manner. That's also, and I'll show you, fully GDPR compliant. So what I'll do with the RAMP demo is I'm going to demonstrate the product from the user's point of view, and then I'll take you into how the configuration works. So first of all, we're going to look for some calls. So what I can do is I can just do a straight search. So if I go start date time, and I'm just going to go, for the purpose of this, I'm just going to go less than today. So that's the 8th, and obviously I can set specific times, and then I'm just going to do a search, and it's going to pull all the calls. I can then sort those by start date time, and you'll see that will show the most recent call first. So there's the calls in, and so on and so forth. When I look at the call, I see all the calls that have come through to the system. So here's a call I made earlier. I can see the call information. Now that's the CDR information from Wildix, so everything contained in the CDR file. And you'll also notice that we pull the Wildix tag data through as well. Over on the far side, I can play the call recording. That will play the file.
This is Nina speaking.
I can skip through the file. And then what I can also do is I can download the file. And my super admin user can do all three functions. So I can play the file, I can download the file, and I can also delete the file. When I download the call recording, if I download one recording, it will download the individual file. If, for example, I'm looking for a set of users' calls, so maybe my 3 calls that I made earlier on, when I then download them, it will make me put them in an archive. So if I do that and click save, you'll see that I'll download to my desktop as a zipped archive. So again, useful if you need to pull them out. So one of the things we see quite often in the compliance world is where a compliance officer will want the last 20 calls from this specific user or this specific customer. You can put them into the archive. It is key to point out, though, that when they're extracted from the system, they're no longer encrypted. So if we move along, I've got the ability to do that. What I can also do is I can also, and this is a new feature we put in, I can also add tags. So I can modify the tags and also the data. So I can give it a rating. So I'll give it a rating of 8, and I'll say happy caller. So I'm actually adding metadata to that record itself. And if I go into a preloaded save search, and if I go and look ratings of good, whatever good is, so 7 to 10, and click get results, you'll see that it will then pull all of the files out of that rating. So this is a sort of rudimentary call scoring module that we put into the last version of RAMP based on customer feedback, and we'll continue to add this in future releases based on what people need, with the idea of building a kind of quality assurance model. But what's really important about this is with any UC platform, you get a limited amount of metadata connected to the file. This allows you to add new metadata to the file as part of your call processing. So what I would do then, if I wanted to, is I can delete the file. So when I delete the file, what it's going to let me do is choose a reason. So GDPR, and I say, so the most common one with GDPR is that the customer will request a deletion. So I'm going to say delete with customer request, click, and then I'm going to click delete. So what I now do is when I do that and I then run that result again, what you'll see is that it will have GDPR'd the fields that apply to GDPR. So my time date stamps, that's not a GDPR field because it doesn't identify the customer, but the phone number does, the caller's CLI, and so on and so forth, plus any other GDPR data. Now, obviously, this comment field, and I'll show you how you can make fields GDPR as well. What that means is two things. Then this is all to do with compliance. It means that I have deleted that file and that's gone. We have no way of recovering that file. So obviously you wouldn't give most users permission to delete a file. But what that also means is that from an audit trail point of view, you've still got, if you look at the very top of the screen, there's 10,916 records. We still have that many records in the database. We've just removed the GDPR compliant ones or the non-GDPR compliant ones, depending on your point of view. That means that you can always prove the model. Now, to take that slightly further, we can also go into our logs module. So if I'm going to go user email equal to, and I'm just using the support user and click get results, you will see that we're tracking every single thing that the user does. So here I am logging in at the beginning of this demonstration at 15:20. Here's my IP address. Here's what I did. So you can even see both the search that I carried out, what recordings I now, obviously, because I have play and download permission, you'll see that I either played or downloaded it, but it doesn't really matter. I've got access to the file. And then you can even see that I've performed the delete with a GDPR request. So from an audit point of view, you can completely track what every user is doing in the system and run reports against them. And you can use the same query builder to do it. So when I look at the query builder, obviously I've got all the different operators. So I can use all of these different operators to build it, but I can stack them up together. So I can add another one, another one, another one. So I can create a very filtered one. So if I sort of say this one, for example, is looking at all calls that from this user. So call source in Wildix will be the username of the extension. What date I want to look. So I put a predetermined date period in, and then a total duration greater than 180 seconds. So you can create very, very customized searches, and you can save those searches so that they can, and share them with other users, so that if you always run the same search, I'm always looking for the sales team on Wednesday, you can build that search so it's always there for you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into settings and how we configure it, because the power of RAMP is really in this side of it. So first of all, let's just have a quick look in the records table. So the records table is the data that's been imported into RAMP from Wildix and all of the different fields. So many of you will have noticed that not all of the fields were there, and that's because I chose not to display them. So for example, Wildix has that cost field. We've chosen not to use it in the search, don't show it in the records table, and don't make it a GDPR field. But if we go, for example, and look at source number, we do use it in the search, and we do delete it with GDPR because it often contains the caller's CLI. If we went over to that comments field, you'll notice that that comments field I have set to delete with GDPR, and so that will also be removed. And if I look at rating, I choose, well, I don't want to remove that because there's no customer identifiable data in a numeric field. So you can use that to filter out the fields that are displayed, and that also makes the display slightly different when you do it. So you can see the different screens moving together, the different sizes of them. So what I'm going to do is go all the way to the end. I won't go into a huge amount of detail about how our API works, but again, we do this as part of partner training. But in simplistic terms, every single function within RAMP is controlled by an API. So what we then do is take these APIs together and use them to build a set of permissions. And this is really important for compliance. So for example, this one, so if I look at a field that says, does the table exist? I'm going to say that's an API and I want to use it. So what I would then do is use that to create a set of user permissions. So a play user, for example, uses all of these permissions to be able to use the system and play a file, but just play a file. You also notice within those API permission sets, you can choose to turn on 2FA. Now, obviously, we recommend turning on 2FA for all users anyway, but you might especially want to turn 2FA on for a delete user. So that user, whenever they log in, will always have to do a 2FA, and that's via both the Google, Microsoft authenticators. They'll always have to do a 2FA to get in, so that you make sure that if you delete a file, you've definitely meant to delete it. Once you've built that permission setup, that would then give you a user type. In this case, I've got my play user type, and I've already built that set of permissions. The reason that there's the two stages is because, for example, if we go back to user types and we look at the delete user, you'll see that the delete user is here made of this delete permission, but that permission will mean that that user logs in, they can find files, but they can't play them. They can only delete them. And again, that's often, we've seen that with far end customers using it for compliance, where the far end customer says, Sam's job is to delete these files, but they're not allowed to listen to them because they're just given a predefined list of records to delete. You could create a user that does that. In the same way with the logs user, you can create an API user that is via the API that can only look at the logs module. So again, good for IT support teams or technical teams or auditing teams. So they can't actually go and listen to any of the call recordings, but they can go and look at the logs and see what users have been doing. So we, as part of our standard deployment, will deploy a set of standard users, which 95% of customers will need these user sets. But if you want to create your own custom user profiles with different types of permissions, say, for example, users that can't modify the branding, things like that, you can create all of those. The other feature that we've got, which I'm going to talk about, is record filters. So if we look at a filter, what a filter will do is say, look at this filter of Rich. This filter is saying, the call source contains Rich, the call destination contains Rich. So that's basically any call to and from Rich's extension. So if I go and get the results, it will show me that this works. So I can see, oh yeah, fine, there's Rich's. So there's a call source one, there's his extension, there's a call destination, there's his extension. So what that's doing is it's creating a predefined filter that we're going to use later on. What I can also do when I've created those filters, I create a filter set. So in the case of my sales team, that I've named after dead rock stars. I think one of them might still be, two of them might still be alive. What I've done is taken one of those predefined, and I can put Rich in that filter set. So that means that that filter set is a group. So I've taken all those individual filters I've created and put them in a filter set. Why is that filter set important? Because once I've done that, when I go to users, when I create a user, so if I go and look at this user of mine, what I can do is apply that filter set to my user. So this is the user creation module. We use the same framework for most of our platforms. You know, it looks similar to MyWallboards. In this framework, you'll see that I'm setting a user type. So what I could do is make my user type play only. And then I'm setting my record set as in that team, my sales team, which means when that user logs in, they are pre-filtered to the user set. So any search they do will only return records that match that filter set. So again, very, very useful for filtering out the data that's come across from Wildix to make sure that the sales manager can only look at the sales calls, customer service manager can only look at the customer service calls. Could even be that there's a third-party client that needs to listen to their calls, say for outsourcers. They could be given access to only their calls, and you can build and design those sort of. And the way you can build that filter set uses exactly the same search process as we do to find call recordings, so it will always match. The last thing that's just a new feature that's recently on the system we just want to talk about is deletions. So when you load calls into RAMP, they sit in RAMP and you can see the total amount of them at the top. And what you can now do is you can create predefined deletion routines. So if I go and edit this job that I've already got, what I'm saying is I want all calls that start between the beginning of 2021 and the end of 2021. And I want to do it so I can do a test, get results, and it will tell me that there are 5,598 records that match that search. I can run that straight away, or I can schedule that to run. So the idea with the schedule is what you actually do is you wouldn't do it like this. What you would actually do is say, right, I want to create a deletion schedule that is all files older than 90 days. So everything older than day 91, every night at midnight or 4 o'clock in the morning, whenever you want to do it, go and delete all those files. Or I want to keep all of the sales team's calls for 2 years, but the customer service team calls I only need to keep for 90 days, providing that you can distinguish between those two data sets, where Wildix is very useful because of the tag feature. If your customer service team calls are always tagged as customer service, then you can create a deletion job that says, right, delete everything that's customer service after day 91, delete everything that's sales after month 12. So that means that you can completely control it. You can give the customer, as I said, using the API permission sets, you can give the customer access to create this themselves, or you can do it for them as a manual process or do it as an automated task as part of the service that you deliver. That's a new feature we've rolled out in the last release in 2.8, and it's standard available to everybody now. So probably the last thing I should just move on to is we're looking at RAMP for Wildix, but RAMP actually works with pretty much any call recording system, and we work with a lot of other call recorders. And when I went back to the beginning of this presentation, I talked about how to use Wildix how to use our product, as a pull-through solution for Wildix. If you talk to a customer who says, look, I want to move to Wildix, but I've got 5 years call recording sat on an old red box call recorder, what we can do is we can bring those call recordings into RAMP, and then we can start to bring the Wildix call recordings into the same RAMP tenant all at the same time. And to do that, all the customer needs to do is switch between the archive types. And you'll notice even the branding changes. Now, ipSCAPE, that I'm going to talk about next, is a completely different solution because it's a contact center platform. So a contact center platform obviously has a lot more metadata. So if I do the same search, you'll notice that I've got a completely different set of search fields. But it's exactly the same function. And so we can pull them in. So really, really useful tool to be able to move archives across. Or if you have a customer that maybe has deployed Wildix in one site and has another vendor in another site that you're providing, or even somebody else is providing, you say, well, I can bring those call recordings in and they have a single centralized source of all their recordings, all following the same security model that all of this platforms do, sitting in AWS, using the CDN to deliver the calls. And you can have as many of these as you like connected together. You can also use this within Wildix if you've got a WMS network to have different PBXs with different archives. Again, so you can apply, it's all to do with permission and access. RAMP's key function is permission access control. So moving over to my slides, how does it work? Well, it's really simple. We deploy the tenant for you against the PBX. We do that once you've made the PBX live on WMP. We have a single £20 a month service charge for the PBX for the tenant, and then it's 65p per gig of recordings. Now, we include the storage in the license price. The 65p is the licensing for the software. So if, for example, you wanted to bring your own S3 storage, and we have partners who do that, that's fine. The price is exactly the same because we're licensing the software by the gig. There's no setup fees. We run it on a 30-day contract model because it's an archive. The customer chooses how long they want to keep it for. And again, you can charge professional services around those deletions and so on and so forth. We have an offer for partners as well. If you want to have a ramp tenant of your own to use on your own PBX, we just charge a fixed rate of £25 a month for that to you as a partner. And we include 50 gig of storage licensing for that as well. Again, you can use it for demonstration or you can use it for your own calls as well. Feature requirements, again, 5.2 WMS. We need a premium license or the TDR viewer needs to be active and we need access to that. And again, Ramp works in any AWS region and is live in all AWS regions as well. Just having a break to have a drink. I'm back now. Okay, ipSCAPE. Now, I'm not going to do a demonstration of ipSCAPE just because of the sheer scale and capability of it, but I quickly want to talk about the feature set within it. So ipSCAPE is a full cloud-based omni-channel contact center platform, again, running in AWS, fully integrated with Wildix. What ipSCAPE allows you to do is it allows you to offer a customer full contact center. So the Wildix contact center offering is really good and has a lot of functionality in the UC space, and with that capability, this is where a customer needs, and you see the features on the screen, this scale of contact center functionality, but fully integrated with Wildix, because quite often with Wildix partners, what you might find is there could be a 400-seat Wildix deployment with a 35-seat full contact center somewhere in the organization that require multi-channel contact, email, web chat, SMS, inbound, outbound dialer. But they also need to pass calls backwards and forwards to what we would refer to as the back office teams who are sitting on Wildix extensions. All of that is standard and deployed with ipSCAPE. So really for the purposes of today, because we wanted to focus on Wallboards and on Ramp, I just wanted to show everybody this. If you've got questions, if you want a demo, we can organize. It takes them an hour to run through the product, and we can talk about that. And also if you've got any customers that you think it would be a fit for, we can sign you up. If you sign up as a COTU partner, as we alluded to earlier on, the beginning of the demonstration, you sign up for all of our products and you can resell all of them. What I wanted to bolt on at the very end, before I run out of time, is VoiceSpider. So VoiceSpider is a platform of ours that is designed to sit ahead of PBXs, contact center platforms, UC platforms. It's an inbound carrier routing platform. The feature sets are there on the screen, but it's specifically designed for resellers as opposed to a direct product solution, customer solution. So you as a reseller define a customer. You can define sub-resellers. If you want to sell it to other resellers, they can then sell it to their customers. And what it lets you do is route and control calls. Again, for the purposes today, we're not going to go into too much detail from a demonstration, but what I wanted to touch on was the key capabilities and functions. So it's got a full IVR platform that has a drag and drop IVR builder that's got an infinite scaling mat on it, and I will show you that. We have built-in call recording. We can in-network queue calls, so we can take calls in, process them in a queue, and give the customer a callback option, and then deliver them down to the far end. The far end being whatever it needs to be. It can be a PBX, it can be Teams, it can be somebody's mobile phone, it can be whatever it needs to be. We can also do that from a destination-based model as well. So, for example, say we'll send the first 30 calls to this Wildix PBX here, and then send the next 30 calls to this Teams endpoint here, and then send the next 30 calls to these 30 mobiles. All of that can be done and configured within a single GUI that, again, is multi-tiered. You can do it, or you can allow the customer to configure it themselves. This works with ClassSound, and it also works with Wildix in the sense that what we do is we can route the calls in and out. You bring the call into the ClassSound PBX, pass it back to us, we process it through the system, and then send it back onto the PBX or onto another PBX, wherever it needs to be. I've got a couple of pictures. This is the graphic, the drag and drop builder. I'll show you a quick demonstration of this as well, but I want to show you this sort of relatively complex one. And then we've also got, not to be confused with MyWallboards, it has its own live dashboard model in it. And some of these features within these live dashboards are similar to MyWallboards, but this is, again, designed to sit ahead of any telephony solution before it, so that the call is routed through. So you have an NGN number, for example, the calls come in and we process those calls down to the far end. Do we put them in the queue? And you can see we've got live dashboards to move them around and so on and so forth. What I will do quickly is I have I'm logged into one. So what I'm going to do is, this is what that live dashboard module looks like. So I'll just show you that it automatically reloads as I move through. So I can see how many calls have come into this phone number today. We can put in multiple numbers. We've got different kinds of charts to show that, and we've got these live in queue rev counters that will shoot up and down based on the number of calls in queue. Again, all of this being delivered to multiple endpoints at the same time, however it needs to be. If I go to my IVR builder, just load this just to show you the capability. I can scale this IVR builder out and in, and I can just keep adding IVR objects. And these are the kind of things we can do. So in simple terms, bring a call in, play a file to it. We can either use TTS, or you can load a text file in. We can then do hours check. We can route it based on time of day, route it based on value, and we can do a read value from a third-party data source. So if a customer has called in and we check their CRM and seen that they're in default on their account, then we can read that value, pass it back, and then send them on to a different destination, but without them having to choose any options in the IVR. But the key thing is really what I can do is I can just keep adding these in and keep building them up. And eventually I can end up with something that looks a bit like that. Now, and I always show that as a demonstration of the capability of this as a drag and drop builder. But it is true, drag and drop, point and connect over to here. And what we found was that different people connect objects in different ways based on the way you look at it. Some people will build a linear flow, some people build a horizontal flow, some people will build something like a bomb's gone off. However you want to do it, you can build it and have it work in this model. So we're launching this into the latest COTU product we're launching into the channel. By all means, get in touch. We can provide the termination if you want internationally or within the UK, or you can bring your own carrier to the platform. And also you can, we can read the traffic through Class N. Alice sort of jumped in because I think I've run out of time. I'm going to stop.
Oh, no, I thought you were finishing.
I'm finished, honestly. Please jump in with any questions and I'll try and answer them if I can.